Hey there, welcome to the Jewish Adulting Podcast. Thank you for joining me today on your adulting journey. Before we get started, can you do me a quick favor? Can you hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to this? I promise it's not a lifetime commitment, but when you don't subscribe, it's kind of like coffee without caffeine. What are we even doing here? Or like latkes without applesauce? Are we even living our best life? When you subscribe, you not only give me warm, fuzzy feelings, but you're also helping me bring amazing guests who rely on subscriber counts to know whether joining me is a worthy endeavor. More subscribers mean more epic conversations for you. And hey, if you're feeling extra generous, you can also show your support by becoming a monthly supporter at buymeacoffee.com/Jewish Adulting. Whether it's $1, $5, $10, or even $20, every little bit helps make this podcast rolling. Of course, if you're sitting on a cool million or even looking to sponsor the show, reach out to me at jewishadulting@gmail.com. Also, I'm always looking out for engaging, thoughtful, passionate guests to join me. So if you want to nominate someone or want to come on the podcast yourself, reach out. Let's make a podcast shidduch.
This is Rabbi Ben-Zion Schaefer of the Shmooze.com. Jewish adulting is about shining a light on parts of ourselves in order to do Avodas Hashem with all the tools and resources at our disposal. It is an honor and a privilege to have every day to further refine our character and grow closer to Hashem. Take advantage of these opportunities before it's too late.
Hello, everybody. This is your host of the Jewish Adulting Podcast. Today I have with me Mushka Gopin.
Gopin.
Yeah.
You want to start over?
Nope, I don't. I say names wrong. Actually, right before, I just did a podcast right before this, and the person asked me, like, literally right before I pressed record, they're like, "Oh, what's your name again?" And I was like, "Oh, good. I'm not the only one who can't say names, doesn't remember names, can't pronounce them." Like, this is just part of not knowing how to say people's names, and someone whose name is hard to say.
Well, you got the Mushka right, so.
Right, good. So to give my listeners sort of a background on this podcast, first of all, this is, I think, the quickest I've pulled the podcast together. We spoke on Thursday night, right? And now it's Sunday night. So this is like very fast turnover time. But we wanted to record it and get it out, within the next day or so, because this event sort of has, a time. It's not completely time restricted, and we'll talk about that more later about how that works. But I got a text message from my father, who is like my number one fan, and he sends me adulting things day and night. And anytime he sees a comic or a video or anything, he sends it to me, and he's like, maybe have this person on, maybe do this. And he sent me this Shana Rishona summit. And I said, okay, what's this about? And I went to the website, and I was so happy. And I know that I'm not the only person who feels like passionate about adulting, but here I could tell that it was, you have a summit, and we'll talk about what that means and what it entails and all of that. But, this experience that you've put together. And I wanted to know, like, who is this person? What makes her tick? What made her do it? What were things that we're going through? And so I want to get into it with you. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for reaching out, because I'm happy to share it with, the right audience who will really appreciate it.
Right. Presumably people who are following me and listening to me are already on board the adulting train, right? They already understand that there are things that we don't know. There's a level of curiosity about the world and things that we haven't figured out. And that's part of the avoda. That's part of the tikkun, that we are constantly striving to, refine ourselves and our character and just sort of look around us for resources. So before we get into what Shana Rishona Summit is exactly and what your vision was, tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, what your background is, and where this idea sort of came from.
Okay, I actually don't work with Shana Rishona. I actually teach parenting education to young mothers specifically ages 0 to 6, like baby or even pre-baby and onwards. And my vision for that is similar to the vision for the summit, which is like, you don't have to learn on the job. You shouldn't have to figure it out as you go along. Your kid shouldn't be the guinea pig. In this case, your marriage shouldn't be the guinea pig. I mean, there's a certain element of learning in life that has to happen, but there's also a huge part of like pre-education that can make you feel really empowered and confident when making decisions. So that's what I do right now. Previously, I was a high school teacher, and most of my career was actually in a not religious high school, this is a really interesting part of my story that doesn't come up often in the work that I do, but I was in a really unique position where I had to teach these girls Jewish subjects. They didn't want to learn it. The parents didn't care if they learned it, so I didn't like have to please parents, and the faculty couldn't care less. So I had no support, but I also had no oversight, and I could do whatever I wanted. And I had to choose topics that I couldn't do anything like I had I called it a one-room schoolhouse because I had like 10 girls, or I don't even remember, because I had the same girls every year. So we got new girls, whatever. But let's say about 10 or 13 girls on average. And there were some girls in the class who didn't know the word Hashem. And then there were some girls in the class who had left yeshiva high school and could read Gemara and spoke Hebrew fluently. So it was just a mess from a teacher's perspective. And I had to really teach them things that would be interesting, engaging, Judaism focused, but not like fluffy the whole day. Like I was there every single day the entire school year. Like I couldn't just fluff around every day. So I was constantly looking for meaningful difference to their lives. So one of the and I was just making up my own curriculum, all the time. I developed my own curriculum. So to make a long story short, one of the things that I developed while I was there was a curriculum that I called Bayis Yehudi because I wanted them to have a Jewish name, but it was actually just straight up psychology, communication, relationship tips and advice. And there was a bit of home ec thrown in too, because we had a kitchen upstairs and I would try to teach them like baking and cooking skills. And I was like, this is the stuff we should have been taught in high school because I didn't have to teach them anything solid, and that was also a drawback, but I was able to teach all I could have taught them sewing if I wanted to. Like I could have taught them anything. So the idea for the summit was planted years and years ago is my point. And I don't know, it just was such an obvious solution to me to offer the world that when I first had the idea, I was like, I had the idea for the format of a summit like 2 years ago, like in a business sense, like to do it as a summit. And I just thought someone would do it before me because it was such an obvious solution for me to take experts in their respective fields. Like I don't pretend to be, I have my one niche and I don't pretend to do anything else, but to draw those experts in all those different areas like finances. Like I have one of the speakers is from a financial organization and I brought in that curriculum to teach my high school students at the time. So the finances and the relationship and communication skills, the shalom bias stuff, and the home management, the systems, the cooking, and then the feminine health and the feminine self-care and stuff like that. And to just put it all together in front of people, package it up and say here it is, here's your guide to real life. I hope you learn it in Shana Rishona, and that's why it's called Shana Rishona. But you'll learn something about it, even if you're single, even if you've been married for a few years, because it's just I wish people knew it sooner. That's the sticking point here. I wish people knew this stuff sooner so that they didn't have to figure it out as they went along.
Right. So, I think that this has been sort of something that I've discussed many a time, and which is, that, previous generations, there seems to be a lot of questions about why are people not learning what we need to know in some sort of, in some way. And I think that it used to be that people were learning from their families, like they were at home, they were, in whatever, they had a farm and they all learned how to cook and they all learned how to pay the grocer and they all had all the things that you needed to do in that time period. And then perhaps because of modernization or what, there's sort of that still kind of got lost of sort of teaching our children these lessons. I mean, do you have any theory as to why? That's just my theory. I'm not a sociologist or anything. I don't know that that's in fact the case. But when I think about why, I have heard a lot of people tell me, oh yeah, I was never taught how to adult. And so now I'm trying to figure it out now. And it sort of begs the question from my perspective, but why, right?
I mean, I to be honest, I never asked myself that question because why? No, there's so many different factors. We can go through so many different angles here. We can say, was it modernization? Is it the fact that college? Did college do that? Just the American or Western path, even though not from people don't necessarily go through the college experience, but just kind of that we're in the culture. It's kind of baked into it that you're only an adult when you leave the house. That expectation. Right. As opposed to starting younger? Is it specifically a Jewish problem where we can ask the same question about college teachers? They didn't exist really before the Holocaust. Mothers used to be there to teach their daughters this information, and that thing got lost. Is it because mothers are working and unavailable to teach their kids? Is it because in a way that they never had to previously? Is it because the school systems face pressure from parent body to teach their girls academic skills and then they don't teach them home ec anymore? Who knows? But
right. Well, like, I think it's an interesting conversation to have, even if you don't actually land on some, scientifically proven theory, because, you're bringing up some really good points that I hadn't thought about. It also doesn't matter. I heard once a speaker very recently, actually it was Alana Barth, who was talking about parenting, and she said, you're not, when there's a ship that's out at sea and like a storm starts to rage, are you going to stop and say, well, why is this happening? What caused it? What was the weather pattern that created this situation? Like, you don't analyze it, you just solutionize it. You have to survive, you have to get through it. And that's kind of, I think, what the summit is aiming to do. So you said that this idea has been a few years in the making, and that the idea behind it was, let's give you a little bit of, at least sort of, introduce the ideas to you, so that when it comes up, you can say, oh, I've heard about this. I've been taught about this. There's resources out there for help with this. But tell me more about how you decided on which topics you decided on. What kind of feedback were you getting from, people that you were reaching out to when you reached out to them?
Okay, so I actually had a vision for this, and I treated it kind of like a curriculum, or like I've worked in print design. So like from an editorial perspective, you have a vision for how the final product should look like. And then you possibly pitch writers or illustrations to complete it. So I first made a list of topics that I thought I wanted to cover, and they fell into 4 categories, which is how I ended up with my 4 categories of like home, work or money, relationships, and self. Those are the 4 categories. And I had a list of topics, and then I was looking for speakers. So I made this list of topics that I wanted to be covered, and then I looked for speakers to fill those topics. And I actually don't follow a lot of like from people like on Instagram, social media, Instagram or whatever. So I asked my audience, I asked for suggestions, and I think that the final list is just practice. Now that the summit is being publicized, some people are reaching out to me, oh, can I join now as a speaker? And no, now it's too late, but I wish I had known about you before, right? So maybe another round in the future. But I think it's just hashgacha practice, the speakers that ended up. And also some of the topics in the final selection were not planned, like they evolved, and then some of my original topics weren't covered. So what ended up happening is just this really great event. And I really thought that speakers, because I didn't know anybody. I think maybe 5 people I was like friendly with on Instagram. One of them I know in real life, and that's it. So I was like just sending random emails to like names that I thought were big or cool. I mean, everyone seems big and cool to me if I don't know them, right? Anyone with a fancy website. And I did look for speakers specifically who had, this was like one of my criteria, the speaker had to have further resources. So I didn't want to just have like an inspiring Rebbitzin that you hear from and then there's no follow-up. Like I wanted speakers who have a product, an offering, a course, a book, something, so that if you like what they're teaching, you are able to follow up with them and learn from them further. I thought that was an important part of this, where I'm putting like a mentor, like a potential mentor in front of you so that you can learn from them further. So I'm emailing all these speakers because you asked what was their response. And I'm like convinced that everyone's going to say no. And so I think I sent out 70 emails out. And about 10 people said no straight out for various reasons. No, thank you, it's not going to work. Okay, fine. A few people never responded to me, and everybody else said yes. And so initially I thought I would have about 20. I thought 20 speakers would be a nice number. 4 days, five speakers per day. And I ended up with, I think, 39. At a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to say 35 plus. Because I know it's not an even 40, but is it 36? Is it 37? I don't even know how to count it. So it's a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said that some of the topics were sort of like a surprise, like you hadn't anticipated. How did the evolution of that come about? I know what my process is when I look for topics for my speakers, but what was the evolution of that?
It was just pretty organic. So someone said, oh, I saw, I heard, because I had been sharing with my audience on Instagram and over email and planning the summit. So, I heard, can I do this topic? And I was like, sure, that would fit in under this category. It was just honestly like that.
Okay. So I guess, so you found a lot. I mean, a lot of these people have, it's very interesting because it does range from a wide variety of people and a wide variety of topics. I'm not going to say which family member, but if they ever listen to my podcast, they'll know who they are. I actually had somebody on Hanukkah say to me, like, don't you feel like maybe you limited yourself to adulting? Like you might not have enough, like you'll run out of things to talk about. And I just laughed and laughed. I was like, adulting is such a rich topic. There is literally so much that can fit under it. It's because it's not just, finances. There's like different aspects to finances. There's different, I know that you're having Simi Mandelbaum on, and she's not a financial planner, she's a financial therapist, right? And so people get like really myopic about what it does it mean to adult, but it fits so many different areas, and it covers such a wide amount of topics. I feel like you could for sure have come up with, I mean, the summit could have probably kept expanding, and like you said, people reached out to you and you're like, there's too much, there's too many people. We could, but you'll do it again. So
yeah, well, just to address what you said, it's not that there was too many people necessarily. The back end of it was just too much to handle because everything was I knew right away, like I would have to pre-record everything. It couldn't be a live schedule by the sheer amount of speakers, was ended up being in everyone's schedules. We have a lot of speakers from Israel in different time zones. So I pre-recorded everything, and that looked like about 4 weeks of my calendar, just nonstop interviews every single day. I mean, it's like 30 hours of interviews basically. And so it was a lot for my schedule, but everyone has their unique angle. And that's something I really work to bring out. So like, there's like 5 financial people, but each one of them is covering there are no repetitions. I mean, obviously some people, there's nothing new under the sun, but every angle really is unique.
Right. Well, I always find that, that repetition is like the cure. So if I say on like 3 different podcasts or 5 different podcasts or even 10 different podcasts, some similar messaging about perfectionism being a hope, dream, and an illusion, that bears repeating. It's the kind of thing that like, it's okay if you say certain things over and over again because people have a hard time with certain concepts, and it takes sometimes hearing it in different ways with different speakers until maybe it finally resonates with you. So, even if there is a little bit of a crossover between some speakers, I could still see that being helpful. How many people have already signed up for the summit?
Okay, so just because of like when we're releasing, like I don't want to give numbers because whatever I say will quickly be dated, but I will tell you that I think we started promoting it like Tuesday afternoon, like hit publish on the website, and 3 days later we had over 1,000 signups. So
wow.
Yeah, I'm like, don't be fooled by like the 88 Instagram followers. Like, never look at Instagram followers ever as a metric because we had over 1,000 signups in about 3 days. Thank God. And the response has been really incredible, and it's really touching a nerve sounds like in the negative, but it's really like people are really excited about it. And I think it really speaks to I see it kind of becoming a movement, like it's being organically shared. And obviously my speakers are sharing it. I mean, I asked them to, right? They're part of it. They're helping me promote it, but people are organically sharing it, spreading it, and saying, oh my God, I wish I had known this. I wish this had been available to me. And that's really kind of the pain point here where everyone's like, why didn't I have this? And let me help send it over to the next girl. So it's really more than just an event. And I told my speakers this early on. I was like, I know I have experience, like, right? I've worked in print design, and I can tell when our magazine or when our newspaper is coming together. And I sent all my speakers an email, and I said, I can see the vision for this, and it's way more than your individual presentation. This is going to be a bit of a movement. It's going to be it's just going to be bigger than an event. And I see in the response that people are having that it really is, which is really interesting to see.
Right. And you mentioned that, I think I asked you so what skeletons are in your closet that, led you to be passionate about this. And you wrote back to me like, I was fairly well prepared for, managing a household. Where did you get that preparation from?
Yeah, I didn't really have, I don't know, I didn't feel like I had a very difficult Shana Rishona or adjustment period. First of all, my mother is just runs such a tight ship, and everything I learned about household management is from her. I mean, budgeting, just keeping the house in order, just systems. I really learned everything from her. And actually, I was surprised when I first got married, and then I started a little WhatsApp group with my other married friends, and everyone was like, what should I make for? Okay, I still ask what should I make for supper because I don't like cooking. But I was like, of course you buy the meat on sale, and then you package it and then like you season it and then you portion it and then you freeze it. Like, doesn't everybody do that? So
Right.
no, they didn't. These are things I learned from my mother. So I wasn't really thrown for that curveball. And I had learned so much psychology, just always self-help and things like that, that I wasn't thrown for, I wasn't thrown either in terms of like a relationship. And I didn't really, this summit is not coming from a place of like, wow, I struggled so much and I don't want the next person to struggle. Which is just, it would be fine if it was, it's just not.
Right.
It's just coming from a place of like, there's a gap here and I'm going to improve the system. And I've found that it's taken me like time to realize this about myself as I get older, because it seems like all the projects I do are random and disconnected, but there's a common theme in all of them, which is I'm paving the way forward for the next person. So when I was in high school and that was sharing high school notes, when I was in seminary and I was sharing a seminary packing list, when I was engaged and I shared a shopping list, created and shared shopping lists for college, when I was teaching and I created teacher support work, now now as a business, I create and share resources for young mothers. I'm just trying to smooth it for the next person. Like, we don't all have to learn the hard way. There's just no reason for it. There's just no reason to keep reinventing the wheel when there are resources. And I'm not creating the resources necessarily. I mean, in my parenting business, I specifically do. But otherwise, like I didn't create, I'm not teaching the finances. I'm not teaching the home organization. I'm just putting those people in front of you, collecting what's already there and putting it into a format that's like easily accessible and also digestible.
Now, I think that the argument could be made to someone who might be argumentative, which is never me, which is that there is a purpose and function in that struggle. That, as a young newlywed couple, or as a young adult first, being out of your parents' household and learning to do things, that work for you. And so much of, like, a lot of people are making it up as they go along, or they have to problem solve in ways that they never had to problem solve before. I think there could be like a growing process that it helps. It could be very empowering to problem solve. It could be very empowering to search for resources. I think that argument could be made that is one of the reasons that our couples in the frum community specifically do get married young, is so that they can learn these things together, and that what you're providing is, it's a resource. It's not like a shortcut, because there's so much to learn. So it's not like you're saying, oh, I'm taking away someone's growth, opportunity, or some, where they could do tikkun and feel autonomous. But there's something very empowering, and this is one of the things that I think you'll agree with me. So that's the question. Do you agree with me? Which is that part of adulting is saying, I don't know, but I'm curious, and I think that someone out there has the resource, and I'm going to look for it, I'm going to utilize it, and I'm going to be that much more wiser, because I'm curious and I want to learn, and I don't have the gaiva that I could figure it all out on my own, and that's going to help you be a more successful adult.
Well, I can't cushion life for anybody. Life is going to life at you, and you are going to struggle with it. And there is growth in the growing pains. I am a big believer in growth mindset and growing through the struggles and the challenges. And there's also a big difference between feeling thrown into it, feeling like you're drowning, feeling unprepared, and that versus I am more equipped with skills and tools. And so when life does life, because it will, and I am facing challenges, I will feel better equipped. And the second part of what you're saying is not necessarily true, because you're saying people feel empowered looking for resources. That is not true. People feel that's part like Z, like maybe. Once they find the resources and they take action, then yes, it is obviously empowering to take active action and take control. But all the way before that is, I don't know what I'm doing. Why is this so hard? Am I the only person struggling? How come nobody ever told me? How come I wasn't prepared? Where am I supposed to turn now? Where do I begin looking for help? And even a step before that is even people not even knowing they need help. So like just in any area, whether it's they think it's normal, they don't know that it's not normal, they don't know that help exists for like whatever it is. And eventually they get led to the point where it's like, okay, yes, now that I'm actively solving whatever problems I have, they may feel empowered. But there's so much before that I think we can troubleshoot for. And will people grow eventually? Like, of course they will. I hope, and also I think there's so much unnecessary struggle and pain that we could possibly avoid. And there's a really interesting part here, which is like just the line, like, nobody told me, I wish I had known. I just believe that you should never have to say that. So for example, I actually don't want to give like sensitive examples, but I was going to say, like, let's say a woman's struggling with something like health wise. All the knowledge in the world won't help her once she's actually dealing with something inside of her body. But there's a huge difference between like, I have no idea what's even happening, and like, oh, this is a thing I once heard about. Okay, well, I know there's a name for it. I know I can seek help for it, you know?
Right.
And when people say like, I wish, how come no one told me? We're not pointing, it's just coming from a place of pain. It's not like, oh, someone specific in my life failed me. It's like, I think it's like a general, like, I don't feel prepared. And once you brought up a lot of points, but I want to like pick up on each one. And then you said, well, we do marry off our couples young and expect them to grow together. Whoa, like, take a huge step back there. Because if you want to say we get them married young, we equip them with communication, like basic communication skills and basic knowledge of how attachment styles will show up in a relationship or something. And then we say like, okay, guys, figure out your marriage and grow together. Sure, that can be a beautiful thing. But are you also going to put on top of them that they're also struggling to make money because they might not have career or experience? They're also possibly paying huge sums of money because they don't know how to manage their money and no one ever taught them how to. She's also learning how to cook, how to shop, how to budget, and she's working. Like, and then you're going to say, oh, well, you got married. Well, if you're old enough to get married, you're old enough to figure it out. Like, that's not true. And that's also not fair. And I just don't think it has to happen like that. And then throw on top of it that she could be pregnant within 3 months and completely not be herself or have difficulties or anything like that. And then you're like, well, they got married. They're old enough to get married. They're old enough to figure life out. And that's just not true. Just because they got married at age 20 doesn't mean they're ready to deal with all of life at age 20. But that's what we expect from people, or that's what everyone seems to be doing, and everyone else looks like they have it figured out except for me. And that's that's kind of the piece I want to have.
I mean, you're making an excellent point that I mean, this is also speaks to some expectations of community, and I'm curious to know if there, you know, you said that you did curriculums when you were a teacher, and I've seen, you know, schools pick up on and adapt to the times where if there's a need that they will then bring in a resource. So I'm thinking specifically, you know, of like my local school brought in somebody who created a curriculum and like education material for eating disorders, Dr. Marcy Forta. And, you know, it was such a huge step as a community to even be acknowledging that maybe we could do things a little bit differently than we've been doing it. Maybe putting this expectation on our young married couples is unrealistic. How, you know, and then when somebody raised their hands in the middle of the speech and said, like, well, what can we do differently? And Dr. Forta was very open and saying, there's really not much we can do except like in our own Dalit Amos, try to educate and teach our children and try to, you know, to mitigate and teach as much at home, because we're not going to change the system. But here, you know, now that you've gone in this direction where you're creating or collating, as you use that language, resources together, has the idea come to you to possibly offer this as a curriculum for high schools and other, you know, places that might really benefit from exposing our kids to these concepts?
I mean, I hope they do. That's not going to be it's not going to be my hill to die on. It like I welcome anyone to take this project and run with it. You want to message me and I'll help you do that. But we have a few different like issues here or like factors, which is like the individual community that it comes from. I know that high schools face a lot of pressure maintaining an academic standard versus keeping the parents happy versus like just blah, 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 everything that goes into it from like a higher than the teacher's perspective. Like I've seen that from more of a higher perspective. And it does also have to come from the house. And so it's like, how much are we also going to absolve parents from it? And well, I guess the question is, how much is it the school's responsibility? How much is the home's responsibility? And then this touched a raw nerve. How much is the college teacher's responsibility? Because the first version of the flyer I put out said everything your college teacher didn't have time to teach you. And it meant that really innocently. Like, of course, like I was like, of course they're not going to have time to teach it to you. So here, I'll put it in the summit. And I got a lot of feedback from college teachers that they weren't happy with what I had written. And they felt like you want to put something else on our plate. Like we're already responsible for so much. Like 2024, 2025, we can't we can no longer just be teaching halacha out of a book. We also have to teach hashkafa, and we also have to teach mental health, and we also have to teach relationships, like blah, 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 like everything. And now you also want us to teach like finances and all the subjects you're covering. And I had a few conversations with college teachers, and I told them, first of all, no, I don't think you should be doing this. And even if you did have more time to teach than the 6 hours you probably get with a kala, I don't know if I would put finances on the list. But it really just speaks to, and I come back to the pain point that people have where they feel like you take a girl who goes to like a typical yeshiva or Beis Yaakov or Am Lubavitch, but all girl systems are essentially the same. So you have high school, then you have seminary, and then you get engaged and you have kala classes. And throughout all that time, you do have teachers, you do have mentors, and you do the thing. There is support for you. And the last person or the last touch point of support that you have is your college teacher. And then you get married. And all of a sudden, real life hits you, however that looks like for you. And the next stage, by the way, is that you become pregnant and you have a baby. And boy, does it really hit you. And that's where I come in. And that's why I started creating my parenting resources, because I just saw so many like smart, nice young girls struggling with what to do with the baby. Like, they know to buy beautiful designer clothing and beautiful designer pacifiers and an expensive doona. And after that, they have no idea how to support child development, create secure attachment, or deal with the baby. Even if they're the oldest in the family and have 2,500 cousins and younger siblings, it's not the same as your own baby, right? So when people say, like, how come my college teacher didn't teach it to me? They're actually not blaming the college teacher, although the college teachers are, taking it personally because they feel like, and I think the college teachers feel the responsibility of this, and that's why they were pushing back at me, like, why are you making this our responsibility? I don't think it's their responsibility at all. I think that what girls are saying, or what people are saying, is like, the last touch point that I had was the college teacher. And it's not fair to expect her to prepare you for all of adult life. And I don't think it's a college teacher's job. So we come back to, whose is it? Is it the girls' high schools? I think girls' high schools could be teaching a lot more useful things than most of the heavy text-based things they're teaching. And I know it's important. I'm also a strong believer in having a strong Torah foundational understanding. You should be able to open a text and read it. And also, they can be teaching more practical things. And by practical, I mean like will affect your daily living. Is it the parents' responsibility? Parents barely see their kids. Girls are in high school the entire day. When is a parent even seeing this daughter that she's supposed to be educating with all her life knowledge? So is it a communal responsibility? Should there be events post-seminary? Like, whose responsibility is it? I don't know that it's anybody's. It's more maybe of like a systemic or a cultural thing. I don't know that there's an answer. I mean, I proposed one answer. I made the summit. That's my solution. I don't know what the real solution is.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that I'm one of those. I share way too much on this podcast. My kids hate it. But one of the things I do is when I go to parenting classes and then someone says, "Oh, how was the parenting class?" And I usually answer like, "I've been doing it wrong all along. And now what?" And so like when I see this and I go, okay, I have a daughter who's 20 years old and she's in shidduchim. If anybody knows anybody nice, send them my way. But, it's like, did I raise her like well enough? Well, here I am, in my 40s, starting a podcast about adulting. You can guarantee there's some gaps in her education coming from me. Like, I guarantee you of that. And so, that makes me feel a little bit guilty, a little bit shameful. Like, I should have done better by her. Did I now set her up for failure? I mean, this is like classical Jewish guilt stuff going on over here. So I'm surprised that you didn't have more parents saying like, hey, I taught my kids how to wash their livers and make a menu and, not buy stuff on Amazon every day.
Well, my mother is horrified that she somehow never taught us how to sew buttons. Like, she can sew with a sewing machine and her mother can sew with a sewing machine, but we don't. We never picked up how to sew. I mean, I have one sister who crochets and knits, but I don't know how to sew a button. And she's like, "How come I never taught you how to sew a button?" So it just never happened. But I had one mother reach out to me and say, "I'm thinking about buying this for my daughter, who's also post-seminary and probably early 20s or something." And I was like, that would be a really concrete thing for a mother to do. And I actually encouraged her to do it. She was like, "Should I have my daughter buy it? Should I wait?" And I was like, "I think you should buy it as a mother." I think just the gesture of it, because I'm saying buy it because at the back end of the summit, which is live for every day, one day's topic is live to watch for free for 24 hours. At the back end of it, you can purchase a VIP pass and get more access to the recordings and other things. So I said, I think the gesture of purchasing it for and it's not that expensive, but you're basically telling her like, here, like learn. Also, teenage girls don't want to hear from their mothers, which is a really also important point. But they will learn from other women. And so maybe part of the answer is one of my speakers, Foley Klein, had a really interesting talk in the summit about building extended tribes of women and finding like the wise women. The village used to have wise women and elders that we turn to for advice. We don't really have that. And so maybe part of the answer is also putting well, today we would call them professionals, not wise elders, but putting those professionals and putting those mentors in front of our young girls or our young women so that they know that the resources exist. So it's just a modern way. It's just a modern village happening online.
Right. I love that. And you're actually reminding me this is like the mind's ability to like make you feel bad, or the ability to make you feel bad. But there are times, like, you're right. Like my teenage daughter came home from seminary and signed up for like 17 credits for a semester. And she didn't even ask me, like, Mom, you went to college. Dad, you went to college. Like, how many credits should I sign up for? I just came back from Israel, and, I have all these artistic ideas and plans and goals. Like, and after she signed up and she was struggling, I said, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you ask me, like, what's practical or what's feasible? And she's like it didn't even occur to her or to like come to me and ask me. And I think that, like, now that you're saying that, hey, your kids don't necessarily want to hear from you. They're trying to figure it out on their own. And she struggled that semester. And it was like, this is the consequence of not reaching out to your parent. But, but they do also, that's part of growing up. That's what I was saying before about, okay, we don't want them to necessarily struggle, which, you made a good point about that. But I could see where this could be empowering from a parent giving it to their young adult, and also, a young adult saying, like, hey, I should learn these because this is part of my adult story. This is part of growing up, is saying, like, oh, I don't know how to do these things. And, I don't know how to spend money, and I don't know how, the different topics that you have. I mean, it's such a, I just love this idea. And I think it's going to be, I mean, I think it's going to be so helpful. And I don't know how you had time to do all of this. Honestly, I didn't ask you like the ages of your children, and I don't know, but my kids are like sick of hearing me say the word podcast. And so now I kind of whisper it under my breath. So tell me how, you said you mentioned how there's a pass and the VIP. Tell me how it works, how this summit works, what someone could expect from, attending it live, from, listening to the recordings. Like, how does it, I've never attended an online summit before. So what can I expect?
Well, it's kind of a virtual event. So the format is going to be different than, let's say, oh, I'm selling a course, whether that's over Zoom, join me over Zoom, or pre-recorded. It's not really like that, because it's like, imagine a virtual conference or imagine any conference where, you choose which presentations you want to attend, but you have to get up and go to a hotel lobby somewhere. So this is all virtual. So if you go to summit.com, you sign up, you get your free ticket. It's in your email. And when the summit goes live on January 20, one day's topics are released. They're all released at the same time. And so you have a whole 24 hours to watch any of those 8 to 10 presentations. On Monday, let's say the day's topic on Monday is home management, cooking, home organization, productivity, strategies, time management, things like that. And then they're going to expire Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. The second topic, which is work, career, finances, budgeting, fighting about money, that comes up, money mindset, free for 24 hours. And so outside of those 24 hours, in order to get extended replay access, a podcast option, transcripts option, behind the scenes option, there's also a lot of speaker contributed bonuses, because for someone who does want to learn from these speakers further, the speakers do have further offerings, workbooks, courses, things like that. And so the speakers either have donated their workbook, their book, a coupon off their course, whatever it is. So all those resources, it's like $1,200. Every time I do the math, I come with a different number, because it's like, am I counting no, that makes me sound bad at math. Like, I use like 12. What happened is some speakers switch things around. That's what happened. So, but it's like $1,200 worth of stuff. So you can buy a VIP pass and get that experience, but otherwise you can watch totally for free. You just have to make sure to catch whatever you watch within those 24 hours. So it's kind of a live experience in that you got to show up live. And by live, it means go to the website. I'm working on a call-in option, so I don't want to promise anything, but a lot of people have asked me if there's a call-in option. I'm not sure yet, but otherwise it's essentially happening on the internet. The videos are either interview or presentation format, mostly interviews. And they're really, really interesting, because it's kind of like a podcast happening really intensely over 4 days. If you want to think about it like that. But they're really
Yeah.
interesting because the women are really sharing, and everyone is keeping in mind the intended audience, which is a newlywed woman, presumably, even though there might be someone, not married or married for 10 years watching it, and really sharing what their expertise and what their expertise is and what they're teaching through the lens of if you knew it at the beginning of your life or right now, and how that might really change the trajectory of your experience with this particular subject. So it's really interesting.
Right. So going to, now looking at it from that lens, if you is there something that you wish? I know you said you were pretty well equipped to run a household, but is there something that you wish you would have known at the beginning of your marriage or when your children were littler that you feel you had to sort of struggle through and you wish you would have had a resource for?
I didn't feel it in terms of my marriage or Shana Rishona specifically. I did feel it more as a young mother where I just approached motherhood really academically, and I was like, I'm just going to learn the textbooks and then do it on my kid and raise him the best way possible, according to the textbooks. And so I really self-educated myself on that. I learned a lot about attachment science, developmental psychology, a lot of Montessori pedagogies, and that's an educational philosophy, but other pedagogies as well. I'm a teacher, so I I made him and I made a curriculum around him basically, and that's how I approached motherhood specifically. But like I said, this was really just a passion. This was to be totally honest, this was more of a passion project. This summit specifically. Because it's kind of unrelated to my actual parenting business, except that hopefully these young women will become young mothers, and then I'll be able to serve them in this capacity, when they're ready for the next stage of being a mother. But I really just wanted to see this project happen. I really just wanted to do it. I just wanted to do it.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like, well, first of all, it's very impressive that you're a one-woman show. I think I reached out to you and I was like, you and your team, and you were like, what team?
Unfortunately.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then even though you said it was a few years in the making, you just described like a 4-month period of time where you did all the recording, which is in and of itself extremely impressive.
Yeah, it was 3 active months. I started after Tishrei, and now it's, I don't know, after Hanukkah. It was 3 months. It's been in my head for 2 years, but once I put pedal to the gas, it was 3 months.
That's probably incredible and also exhausting. I'm tired just talking to you, and
it's a big project,
which isn't so hard to do. It's not so hard to make me feel tired, but did the kids take it okay? Did everybody survive it?
Well, I'm only working when my kids are in school, basically. My whole work day is 4 hours long. So,
right. Wow. And the evening times.
And then my evenings, although as we record this, I have one kid throwing up. So
I wasn't going to say it, but now that you've said it, now that you've opened that conversation up, we've had to pause the recording a few times for her kid, which is kind of, so it really is a measure of your commitment to your kid and a commitment to this project that you're even talking to me. So I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for coming. Is there anything, can you tell us the website, your website, is there anything that I didn't bring up or I didn't tell the audience that you'd like to say?
I'll tell you the websites, and I want to share about the experience a little. Well, I think I shared about that. I really want to encourage women to sign up. I want to encourage women to come. I want to encourage them to share it with their friends, because you're definitely going to gain something. And there's there's a lot of presentations that kind of happened, right? I didn't intend for it to be overwhelming, but whether you catch, 20 minutes of one, or you try to binge them all, or you pay to get access to them later, you're going to learn something. And I think more than learning from the thing that's available, actually watching it, is knowing that it exists, knowing that there are other women out there that you can turn to for help, that there are other women participating with you virtually, tuning in, live streaming it, I guess, and that you're really not in this alone. And that's a really important message, because we spoke about, should you struggle through adulting? Should you not? Who should teach you? Who's responsible? How do you learn it? And the real answer is you're never going through anything alone. Although you might be, having a singular experience, there are other people around you as well. There are always people to reach out to for help. There are always people to network and connect with, whether that's peers kind of on a parallel level or people a step above you that you can reach out to. I think if women reached out to women and I guess became the village that we all wish existed, but there is no village. We are the village. We are the village if we make ourselves be the village. And so that's really my hope. Those are really what's really interesting is that in every speaker's presentation, whether she's talking about I can literally give you an example in each of the 4 categories, because whether she's talking about the marriage or she's talking about the cooking, she's actually not talking about those things. She's really her deeper messages are really like empowerment, intentionality, like making intentional decisions, especially as an adult, taking control of your life, reaching out to others. Like it's really just the same messages that just leaning into the season that you're in now, adjusting to the transition, like just the messages that carry through each presentation. So I really want every Jewish woman. I'm like, why? This is the internet. Let's get 10,000 people to sign up. I mean, there's no limit, right?
Right.
Let's let it reach everybody. So the
Right.
summit goes live on January 20, ShanaRishonaSummit.com. And you can sign up more and hear more things about you there. And I do want to share a fun fact. You asked if there was anything else I want to share. I want to share something really fun, because I designed the website and I did all the, like every word written on the website I wrote, and all the design. So there's a lot of, I'm very detail oriented. There's a lot of attention paid to detail there. And one kind of fun thing that I threw in there is that the logo, which I actually made, it's using elements from a logo that I did not make. The website, the logo for my main business, I did not make, but I pulled a heart and a house out of there. And the logo is a diamond ring with inside the diamond is a heart and a house. And each of those 4 elements represent one of our 4 topics. So the house, the heart, the ring, and the diamond. And I just want to point it out because I want people to notice that, pay attention to it. And then the videos have a really nice intro with a song by Ellie Marcus, who graciously let me use it, which people, if you're ever using music from somebody, make sure to ask the artist for sometimes pay a license for it. And it's a song that he sings. It's a letter that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote to a bracha for a marriage. And at Lubavitch Chuppahs, we read it under the chuppah. And the bracha is on the foundation, I'm trying to like translate as I go along. On the foundation of Torah and mitzvahs, you should build a binyan adei ad in a good and auspicious time. Mazel tov. I might have said that out of order because the song, because I'm like translating the song. But every video starts off with like 7 seconds of him singing Al Yisodei HaTorah VaMitzvahs, on the foundation of Torah mitzvahs, Mazel Tov. And I think that's such a beautiful bracha. I mean, it's coming from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, but it's a beautiful bracha, whatever stage you are in your marriage, before, during, after, to build a binyan adei ad, to build whatever that means, right? That's a different conversation, whatever that could look like, based upon the foundations of Torah mitzvahs, in a way that brings ultimate joy and fulfillment to your life. You open up this podcast talking about your avodas Hashem, and having that bracha guiding you through whatever aspect, whatever practical, right? Having that like spiritual bracha guiding through all the practical aspects of what that can look like. So that's like a fun thing I threw in that I want people to notice and absorb the bracha as it's given. Summit.com, and that's where you'll find this project.
Right. It sounds like you really do have attention to detail, and that the intentionality behind this project was really thought out. I hope that people enjoy it. And I think, and actually you were making me think as you were saying that this would be a great gift for like a kala in your life. Is there a gift option?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a gift option, which looks like them getting I would say like email me for it. Like I'm going to update the sales page for it to reflect that, because they can receive a separate email where they're not getting the payment confirmation, basically, and a separate email letting them know that they have a gift coming their way in their inbox, and they can absolutely be gifted that experience. I think that's a gorgeous gift to give.
Yeah.
And it's more than it's really the intention behind it. It's the same thing as if you would buy it for your adult daughter. It's really a woman gifting it to another woman. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's my purpose. I mean, like, even for my children, where I say, like, I might not be able to get this resource, to give you this resource, but let me find the person who can and connect you with that person. I think that's really a measure of parenthood that we need to lean into, of like, if we can't do it, let's ask the people who can.
You don't have to know everything. You're not supposed to. You're supposed to give, on the contrary, you're supposed to give your child an attachment village and put in front of him people that you trust. And it's no different than like us, like you find the people that you want to connect with, and then you go to them for advice. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. I hope your child has a refuah shlema. And I look forward to hearing the outcomes from the summit, and I hope that it does go viral, and that 10,000 people sign up, and it continues to grow year after year with more topics and more content, and just continue to be a resource for people.
So, it only has to affect one person. That's the truth. It's not the number. It's that as long as it helps one person, I'm done. it's vision, mission accomplished. So Amrit will reach with the person that it needs to reach.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night. Views expressed by me, your host, and my delightful guest are not necessarily reflective of each other's views, ideas, or life choices. Sometimes we're on the same page, and other times we're not.